With the Enterprise's damaging run in the Gorn last week, it's time to not only stop for Starbase One, but for a shore leave episode. And apparently a shore leave episode with Vulcan body swapping. Yeah, let's take a look at the latest Strange New World episode, Spock Amok. Spoiler warning, we're discussing the episode in full detail, so turn away now if you don't want spoilers. Welcome to Trek Central, I'm your host Captain Jack, and let's get straight into it. This episode was written by co-showrunner Henry Alonso Myers and Robin Weiselman. It was directed by Rachel Litterman. Now, before we actually go into the full detail of this video, if you want to keep up to date on the latest Star Trek news, lore and more, then make sure to hit that subscribe button to never miss a video from the team here at Trek Central. Seriously, hit it. You can also follow us on social media for daily updates on the Star Trek universe. As always, please let us know your thoughts in the comment section below, because if you're talking about Star Trek, then of course we want to hear about it. Okay, engage. So this was an exceptional episode of Strange New Worlds. The whole episode was a lesson in learning to not empathize with other people, but to see their point of view and where they're coming from, but in your general Star Trek twist on the matter with a sci-fi perspective on it. This message was not only present in the plot of the episode, but also in the meaning behind both other side of the plots of the story, something which Star Trek does super well. Body swap episodes are usually very hit or miss with me, but having the body swap happen through the Vulcan culture, the soul swap, and caused by Spock's own feelings about not being accepted for who he is by his fiancée is fascinating as a Trek fan. It made this usual cliche trope actually funny and interesting for once. Not only do we know that Spock has previous problems with his human side and Vulcan side, being his upbringing on Vulcan, something he's kind of struggled with for a long time. But this episode and how it deals with his conflict within Spock connects and enhances with Trek's past in very meaningful ways. The first one, which is great, is Spock mentioning how he got bullied as a child for his dual nature. Something we've not only seen in the animated series episode Yesteryear, but since this episode is a basis for a lot of lore we know about childhood Spock, it was implemented into the young Spock scenes from the 2009 Star Trek movie. We even have in this episode, Spock also mentioning his pet Shletshashea. I'm not going to be honest, I have no clue how to pronounce that. Basically he bonded with it, you can check the episode for the actual pronunciation. Not only do we have this connection to what would have been Spock's past, but we have a connection to Spock's future family, named the Kalefi. Now in the opening of this episode, we see Spock going into this Vulcan arena, very similar to one we see in Amok Time, which surely is the episode Spock Amok is trying to reference. Spock's nightmare is about T'Pring not accepting Spock's human side, and manifesting in the dream as Kalefi being called. And Spock has a fight between his Vulcan and human side. I'm very glad this was a dream, physicalizing the inner conflict between Spock and not for where the episode Spock and human sides actually fight. That would have been a bit weird. Think of the episode Tuvix, but in reverse. You know why. The almost sad thing about this, however, is that we see Spock worrying that his fiancée will call Kalefi, because she doesn't approve of him. Now this eventually does happen, with T'Pring calling for Kalefi in the TOS episode Arena. But we know this isn't because she disapproves of Spock's lineage, but because she found someone else who seemingly didn't prioritize duty over her. In a way, I feel like this episode actually improves among Amok Time, as T'Pring and Spock do not come to an understanding about each other and an acceptance towards each other's perspectives in this episode. T'Pring's decision wasn't one made with disapproval of Spock, just knowing they were not right for one another at the end of the day, which is a pretty adult decision. Now obviously you could argue that the relationship could have been ended in a more amicable way and not needing a ceremonial fight to the death. But you know how much drama Vulcans like, for someone who doesn't really like emotion, and as Spock says near the end of the episode, Vulcans do not lie, at least not in the way humans do. Let's talk about some emotions. Now this episode is extremely episodic, it's a shore leave episode, but as we have promised with this show, we get these episodic episodes, but there's still an emotional through line within the show. Spock and T'Pring were in episode 1, and Spock chose duty over her, and we see the ramifications of that in this very episode. However, it does not take away from the episodic nature in my opinion. You can still just watch this episode and get enough from what is said in the episode without having to actually watch the previous one. I like it. One of the more interesting aspects of these character moments carrying on throughout the episode is the USS Enterprise herself. And yes, the Enterprise is a character of the show and always has been and always will be. The Enterprise was pretty beaten up by the Gorn last episode, and we see so it kind of damaged as it arrived at Starbase One. These damages weren't just forgotten about, and is a reason why we have such a great episode, and why the crew get to spend shore leave on Starbase One. Or why Admiral April brings Pike into these diplomatic talks. Speaking of April, he's obviously mentioned in the episode and seen in the episode as well. Reappearing once again is fantastic to get more of Adrian Holmes. He brings so much energy to the character of April, and I'm glad he didn't just appear in a one-off and was done. Seriously, we need to see more of Admiral April throughout the series. He wanted Pike to help out with these diplomatic talks, Pike was actually wearing his green wraparound uniform, something which Starfleet captains had the option of wearing instead of a gold uniform. We saw Kirk wearing this numerous times during the original series. Now quite personally, I think it's a very bad fashion choice and I just managed to stick to gold because it looks a lot better. Just saying. You've got to admire the long leash that April gives Captain Pike during these negotiations. Some may question why this is the case. Surely a captain should be acting a bit more respectful towards an admiral. Though you've got to remember, if you didn't know, Pike is April's former first officer when April commanded the Enterprise, so it does make sense. Now the reason why April is here is to bring Spock and Pike into talks with the Ring-Ovarians. This is a classic diplomatic setup for an episode. Talks these people have stalled, and they're important because they have something the Federation needs and wants. In this case, it is for space itself, an axis between the Klingons and Romulans so the Federation has easy access to the rest of the Beta Quadrant. Now we've had diplomatic episodes in Star Trek before, of course, obviously, but this one was rather unique with how unique the Ring-Ovarians actually are. At first we hear the talk stalled with the Tellarites, and that they had a shouting match, which is to be expected. Now you can see it being pretty bad, but part of your Trek brain is very, but that's how Tellarites interact. Yeah. Now then we get them interacting with Pike and they're very jovial. This is how humans interact. They then request to speak only to Spock, though for Hinkichink's reason to bring us in Spock's body. But when the Ring-Ovarians start to piece it together, both we and also Pike start to realise what's going on. They are just mimicking the people they're talking to. So Pike goes one step further than us in the audience, and realises that the reason why they're mimicking is in the hopes that the other side sees their perspective of what it means to be part of the Federation. Pros and cons. Again, further reinforcing his episode's direct theme. This episode theme is also shown in the other side of his episode, with Una and Lan, who are trying to get a better understanding of the crew by undertaking Enterprise Bingo. Now Enterprise Bingo was first mentioned in a previous episode of Uhura, but now we get to see what it is and just like the list of things people do. So it's not less of an actual bingo and more of an increasingly difficult list of things to do on the ship. And if you get caught, you lose. Items on this list include some really weird things, including a phaser stun duel, turbolift 2-floor shout challenging, unsanctioned spacewalks, and finally, Sign the Scorch. Now I'm sure most of the things on this list are just Easter eggs and shouldn't be taken too seriously, but Una and Lan finally get to understand why the lower deckers do these such things. And it's to break the rules, so they decide to sign the Scorch in the only way they could. And that's by extending a force field on the section of the outer hull, so they can walk on without an EV suit. Oh boy. Honestly, this feels like something from Star Trek Lower Decks, but maybe that's the connection. The weird thing about the Scorch, however, is it's said to be the oldest hull panel on the Enterprise, which hasn't been replaced. Though I am pretty sure the position they find in is the exact location where the Enterprise had a hole in from a torpedo, which blew up in the final battle of Discovery Season 2, and killed a really nice Admiral, so yeah. As this is a shore leave episode, many of the other crew are enjoying their shore leave obviously, apart from Uhura, who is seemingly on duty to take the minutes of the Ring-Ovarian talks. Though Uhura being stuck with his talks is a good way for her to not meet T'Pring, who she first sees in the original series. As you can see, these characters have to be kept apart, but technically she did meet T'Pring through Spock's body, but obviously didn't know it was T'Pring. Now we do get some excellent character moments and scenes which may have not fed into the overall narrative of the episode, but was great nonetheless. We've got to talk about nurse Christine Chapel, who did contribute to the theme of seeing other perspectives and being honest with yourself. Christine Chapel, with Jess Bush's performance as this character, has really impressed me. But this episode was on another level. We've seen Chapel be quite quirky as a character, but doing things in a way to get the job done. In this episode, we see this aspect of Chapel slightly fall apart. She has trouble with commitments in relationships, and seemingly only wants no commitments in partners, but there is something else there. If Chapel was a new character, it would look like she's falling for Spock and lying to herself and saying she only wanted fun. Chapel does fall with Spock in the original series, and this could be the case here, but I think it's deeper than that. For those who do not know, Nurse Chapel was and is engaged to Roger Corby, her former professor. This was a plot point in the original series, and it was around this time Corby went missing. This is probably why she can't get into committed relationships. The last one she was in, the guy went missing and won't be found for another 7 years. Bit of a long one. Though again, this could just be about Chapel developing feelings for Spock, or a mixture of both, like Corby, since she says she loves Spock in the TOS episode The Naked Time, which took place even before she found Corby in What a Little Girl's Made Of. Certainly some food for thought. Some other characters which were nice to see but didn't contribute much were Mbenga just being a real into fly fishing, love that for him, but maybe he could have taken his daughter out of the transporter buffer. Eric having thought of a Vulcan lurper before and having scars from it, and then seeing was a bowling ensign on the Enterprise crew. Honestly, these details we love it. Now finally, some of the amazing things which really do need to be mentioned are the following. Starbase One was damaged during the Klingon War, which we did see in Discovery Season 1, and it's probably the reason why it looks slightly different. It's also why they added these biodomes to the station. The Ring solar sail ship was beautiful, and it's very nice that it's described as a flagship and purely used for diplomatic and ceremonial purposes. Another Constitution-class vessel is seen docked at Starbase One. I do wonder which one this is, and maybe this one that might be showing up sometime soon, i.e. the Crash Constitution, or perhaps a Farragut. This episode of Strange New Worlds was crafted in an expert way, where all the plots not only fed into one another, but reinforced what the episode is trying to talk about. The episode was densely packed with lots of stuff, and will allow for ample discussion while we wait for not being the only next episode. But I think this episode is worthy of discussion with a lot of great Trek episodes, especially when it comes to characters like Spock. The only plot which I felt slightly disconnected from is the main narrative was Una and Lan's plot, but yet it's still connected with the overarching theme of the episode and therefore didn't feel too weird being in the episode itself. I also have to say Una having #1 in the signature is so on brand and I love it. Composer Naomi Mulholland did some excellent work on the music for this episode, with the use of the TOS action music during the Amok time scenes to the extremely inspirational Trek music that played when Pike was defending Spock and the Federation in the eyes of T'Pring and when the Ring of Irons finally flew the Federation flag. She does an excellent job with the score for this entire series and needs to be given all the credit she deserves. This episode was all in a sense a comedy and was extremely funny at times, and it still kept that heart and wonder which Star Trek should have. So it did an excellent job, and I feel that Strange Worlds in how each episode is distinctly different, yet still maintains this quality, is an effort in of itself, and is making the series shape up to have one of the strongest first seasons of an entire series in the Star Trek universe. It's quite a big mark. With this officially being the halfway mark for the first season, we can definitely say this. We are loving this series. Pike, the Enterprise crew, and the Strange New Worlds we're going to visit and inhabit. So what did you think of the latest episode of Strange New Worlds? Let us know in the comment section below, because if you're talking about Star Trek, then of course we want to hear about it. Get commenting. If you want to keep up to date on all the latest Star Trek news, lore and more, then make sure to hit that subscribe button to never miss a video from the team here at Trek Central. You can of course follow us on social media or join our community Discord server. But as usual, for now I've been Captain Jack, thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time. Live long and prosper my friends, goodbye.